Oh, there we go. We're live now. Welcome to This Week in Search. Dave couldn't meet us. He's in charge of the infirmary at his place today, I guess. But Kevin and Doc and Steve showed up, so who needs anyone else? What matters is here. Kevin, tell us a bit about yourself and get things started here.
Thanks, Terry. Kevin Dory. I'm the director of SEO at Dealer On. I do automotive and local SEO. And right now I'm prepping for the influx of conference season between State of Search in Dallas and then PubCon in Vegas and then Ungagged in Vegas. So it's lots of slide decks to make. So it's been a fun week.
Oh, Ungagged, is that the opposite of gagged?
Yeah, it's
in Las Vegas. That sounds like a movie.
They do one in London, I think, in the spring, and then one in Vegas. It's nice because it's sort of it takes a lot from the old days of SMX Advanced when they would have the no tweeting, no social. So they basically, when you go to the sessions, you don't promote it on social media, the things that happen at the session. It takes a lot of the conversations you would have at the pub or after a conference happens and puts it on stage. So I went last year for the first time and it was a good time. So I decided to go back this time. And actually last year it's over the weekend from a conference standpoint. It starts on a Sunday and goes through Tuesday. I made the mistake of staying in Vegas through PubCon into Ungagged because I thought that'd be a good idea. So I spent an entire week in Vegas, and I will never ever do that again. That was very bad. 2 Wednesdays of waking up and going, this is the second Wednesday I'm in Las Vegas. This is not good. But this year worked out well because PubCon is the 15th to the 18th of October, and Ungagged is the 4th to the 7th in November. So there's a couple week gap there. That's me.
A longer time than Vegas for some.
Yeah, no, I'm not staying 2 weeks. I'm definitely coming back to Dallas for that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Doc?
Yeah, Doc Sheldon here of Intrinsic Value SEO and Search News Central. And what have I been doing? I had some fun. Yesterday, I got one of those interesting blackmail emails where they told me what my username and password was, but it was a password that I stopped using probably 6-8 years ago. So apparently somewhere somebody got breached and their database got lifted and I was in it. Anyway, send $800 to our Bitcoin account, or we're going to put all your videos that we activated your cam and got you wanking to a bunch of porn sites. We're going to send it to all your contacts. And the weird thing was, it came from my email address, purportedly. And I went and looked at the source on the thing, and it was very artfully spoofed because I can't find how they did it. It does look as though it came from my email address, but it didn't. I went into the server and looked, and it didn't. So somehow or other, they managed to spoof it to make it look as though it had. But I was kind of disappointed because I was hoping there was an email address I could go back to these turkeys and have a little bit of fun, but left me high and dry.
Yeah, if you open up the head of that message, you should be able to find out where it originated from.
I did, and like I said, it was very cleverly spoofed somehow or other. I don't know how they've done it.
Like it's coming from your own?
It does, yeah. But like I said, I went to the server and it didn't. So I got to dig a little bit on that. It's kind of interesting. It may be something worth writing about because I'm sure the thing was well enough written that I could see a lot of people falling for it.
Yeah. Steve and I both got those.
Yeah. You can change the. If you put it through a proxy, at the proxy, you can change the header information, can't you?
That is over my head. I don't know.
Not sure about that.
I have no idea.
I mean, it's easy to spoof the respond to, that to trickier average recipient. But anybody that's tech at all would normally be able to detect that real quick in the header. Like I said, it's interesting because it was pretty well done.
Yeah.
But obviously, I'm not scrambling to buy Bitcoin to pay them off. So
yeah.
That's the other thing.
Too. I kind of looked at it and thought, oh, that's interesting. And that was it. Deleted it. The first thing they said, don't delete this. We'll know, and we're going to, blah, blah. I deleted it. Nothing happened.
The other thing was that it said that there was a timer, 48-hour timer, to be activated as soon as I opened the message. And if I didn't pay within that time frame, they're going to send it to all my contacts. Well, we're going to wait 72 hours just for fun of it and see if they come back at me again.
Email them back and say, my customers are still looking for that email.
Yeah, we're really disappointed. Everybody's on the edge of their seats.
Yeah, waiting to see her.
Anyway, that's what my last day has been about.
Okay. Steve, how's your week going?
Steve Bonin, Harris Web Creative. I've had a good week. I've had a couple good weeks. Busy every day. I've been just basically doing the day-to-day grind of making sites better, building a new one, fixing up some old ones, and that's it. I saw an interesting article. Boy, I'd have to pull it up, so I'm not going to talk about it now. But it's about looking at evaluating form inputs at both the JavaScript level in the browser, and then doing it again at the server level in PHP, and what happens if you don't do that, and how your websites can be have some HTML or some injection in the form fields if you're not doing the evaluation at the server side. I'll have to try to pull that up again. Anyways, that's it. What are you doing, Terry?
Wondering about what you just said.
I'll try to find it. So
because I've been I always do server side check as well on the form coming in, and but I found I don't use JavaScript anymore, or maybe it is using JavaScript, but I'm using what's natively in Bootstrap for form validation. There's a class that you can invoke. I'm not sure if it uses JavaScript or is manipulating CSS. I'm not sure.
Well, it would use JavaScript or one of the derivatives of JavaScript to just test the form for characters, like the form input for special characters.
Yeah, I think on the Bootstrap validation, it's part of their jQuery feed that you also get when you get Bootstrap. You include a jQuery.
Right. So I'm beginning to remember a little bit more. So somebody is filling out your form through a proxy, and so the something goes back to the proxy, and then they inject it there, and it goes to the server. So if you don't recheck the inputs at the server, they can inject code into the form on the server side. So that's
right.
It's talking about validating the form twice in the browser and on the server, and that's essentially what you need to do now.
That's a good programming practice. But if you look at every form that you get in WordPress, you can't do that. In fact, you can't even, on most of the forms in WordPress, you can't even put data into the database, from what I've seen, not from Contact 7 or Gravity have I seen a way to add your form data to a database.
Well, that's kind of the point is, you know, your 35% of the websites out there are WordPress based, and the form plugins are only using JavaScript or a derivative of that to validate the form.
Right.
And no PHP.
Right. Which also means if the email isn't working properly in those forms, and I've had this happen, nothing happens and nobody knows that they're not working. And you have no way to know what you got. That's why I took all my clients off of forms in WordPress and use my own forms so that I can put it into a database and have a backup.
That's a good idea. And so what do? Put it onto the page in an iframe?
No, I just put the form pointing right at a PHP script outside of WordPress.
Oh, I see. Right. Yeah. 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 That would be a good idea.
That works really well.
Yes.
And I've been using a program called PHP Snippets, and it's really good for adding PHP code into pages. I actually did a website where I was downloading information from the database and putting it into a WordPress page.
Yeah, I have a plugin like that I've used once, and it allows you to write some PHP into the into one of the probably the functions file or something.
Yeah. This one writes its own snippets and puts it in just like a what are those called?
Like a hot link?
Drop the code in brackets into the thing.
Basically embeds it right in the content envelope.
What are those? I'm trying to think of what they're called. Can't think of it now. It works with a plugin, so you put the code in the page and then the plugin works off that code.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Not a hot link. Shoot.
Is that called a hook?
No.
Or a widget? Or
like a widget.
Yeah, I'm not really up on my WordPress.
It's like what Contact Form 7 uses. You build your form in the plugin, and then you just embed this little snippet on the pages. What the hell are they called?
Oh, short code.
Short code.
Yeah, there you go.
Put the short code in. Now, the only problem with using PHP and WordPress, you can't get into the head. So it's got to be after the head is loaded, which means you can't do a redirect. But you can load other pages inside of a page, do everything you can do as long as you don't need to do it in the head. Very, very good. For me, I find it really useful. I've actually used it on 3 sites now, and it beats having to do the same thing outside of WordPress and, redo the page and everything. Copy the page outside of WordPress takes time. It's easier to just drop it in.
Well, plus that would be slower too.
Yeah.
So that's another thing. Do you keep a library of functions on your hard drive that you can just copy and paste? Or do you keep a library?
In my editor, I have functions for PHP, ASP, HTML, a whole bunch. I use Notepad Pro, been using it as my editor for over 20 years. Same one. The good thing about it, I've had 500 documents doing mass search and replace, and it did it like 90. Thing is the best program I've ever use for editing anything. It does regular expressions for search on the page, all kinds of stuff. So when I need to do search and replace in a document, I use it. If I want to do concatenation in Excel, I'll first put it in there and do some work with it there first. Saves me a ton of time. But the good thing about it is when I want to set up, say, a contact form, 2 clicks. 1 click to drop the code to process the page, and 1 click for the form. It's all pre-made.
Nice.
What's it called? Notepad Pro?
Notetab Pro.
Notetab Pro.
Yep. Kristen started using it after I showed it to her too.
Yeah, I still use Notepad++.
Very similar, but not with this does a number of things. Like I have programming in it from everything from C+ to C and Perl. I think there might even be some awk in there.
Hey.
Just over the time accumulated. So when I see a function that I'm going to use over and over, I put it in that in the editor, and it sets everything up for me. Saves me a lot of time. When I was doing ASP, I didn't have to spend thousands on software for Microsoft's WYSIWYG editor. I just had my own, and it actually did a better job, cleaner code.
So the other thing I read this week was that I think I threw it in the forum in the chat, was about the new Google Search Console giving out all kinds of warning letters for schema because it wasn't filtering any of the blank fields. So if you had, if you were doing schema for the blog talked about recipes, if you didn't fill out one of the fields, the new Google Search Console was sending you an email telling you had an error.
Yeah, that's not just recipe. Many schemas have required elements that have to be there. For instance, an offer has to have a price.
Right.
I noticed on events yesterday too. When you posted that, Steve, I went and I was looking at it, and events was doing that to me.
Yep.
Any fields that I left blank, it was pinging me on. And
right.
Yeah, I just did event programming, and there's some that can be left blank, but there's some that are absolutely required. And the good thing is the Google tool will tell you if it's required or not. And sometimes there's some goofy shit that's required, like a picture on a event. Well, not every event has a picture.
Yeah, they want a picture.
Yeah.
So I got pinged on offer and performer, and it's a show event. It's a industrial show, so there's no performer, and the offer, you're at a booth. There is no offer. So but it's throwing me 2 warnings for that.
Actually, free is an offer too. So you could have put it's a free event, and that's an offer.
Right, that's true. I could have done that.
Always think her through, Steve.
Yeah.
Yeah, I came across that too. The picture had me scratching my head. And then I just decided I'd put the same logo in every one.
Yeah, that's all I did. Is I put a picture of the logo.
Right, because the logo is for the company where the events take place. So
right.
Makes sense.
So Kevin, tell us in broad strokes what you're doing with local.
What?
Broad strokes.
What's the secret formula?
We should save this discussion for when Dave gets here.
Yeah.
Well, the one thing that we just noticed is we've had a lot of success. We didn't notice this. We've had a lot of success in the past with Google Posts in the Google My Business aspect, but we just noticed that they are now not showing up in your Google My Business listing in the knowledge graph like they were before. They used to be at the top.
Right.
Now, in the last week or so, we've noticed that they're significantly lower, and we're trying to determine what kind of impact that's going to have on some of our clients that have had a lot of success. So it's almost below the fold if you think about it that way.
Could that be just a
I don't know.
focus on freshness?
I also don't know if it's just as they change, like if it's 2 weeks from now, if they're going to go back up. I don't know if Google's doing their own A/B testing, as we've all seen many a time when the ad space for AdWords moves around, when everything, we don't know. So that's why we're trying to get like a 30-day window to understand where they're moving to. I think it could just be, I'm hoping it's not because people were spamming it and abusing it. But like anything, the things that work, we eventually make it so they don't work. But with that, the fact that Google Posts don't have a life longer than a week.
You can now get, if you call your post an event. So
Yes.
even if I was posting a sale, I could call it an event and it would stay up for a lot longer.
Yes, yeah, and you can do it. You can post date it. Like if you're doing a post about an event to the same degree. Like if I'm doing something about Thanksgiving, it'll stay up until Thanksgiving goes away, or until that date pops up. But that I like the fact that you have to go back in and refresh it. It's a good built-in anti-spam mechanism, so that you can't just in your traditional posts put up posts that are there forever. You have to go back and add them, and that's why we've had a lot of success with them from a dealership standpoint, more like sale capabilities. Like, hey, these are relevant to you in the local business. These are your upcoming specials. Or we just don't talk about price from that standpoint, more like from a service standpoint, like, oh, you get an oil change. That has been our biggest hurdle, was trying to explain to our dealerships that we had to make sure that it wasn't a case where it's not a time sensitive or a bait and switch. You never want to put up there that, like, here's the post for a car, like that. We don't want to do it for one specific car, because if you don't have that car, then somebody's going to get upset when they come in and see that. Well, you advertise this. Well, that's why your advertisements are usually more generic on models, not on specific ones. So we've had that's what I'm monitoring mostly. I mean, I could get into more, Steve, but then everybody will turn off.
Well, I don't know. I mean,
the secrets, Gavin, no less.
Like we were saying in the green room, locals become much more important over the last couple of years, because whenever you do a search, it's always local, virtually.
Local became
I think it became for one degree, it became a buzzword, sort of like when inbound marketing became that. But I think it is true that the search landscape moved to a local capacity much more quickly than some anticipated, because so many businesses are reliant on Google. Businesses that didn't used to think that they needed websites 5-10 years ago, that now need the website, because that's how everybody, I call it like the grandma technique. Like when your parents or your grandparents, or if they are grandparents, are using their phones to use Google, then things are going on. Like when all of the technologically not savvy folks start using iPhones and things like that, and they're reliant on immediate gratification that is search, then everything becomes local. So I think the important thing for me, as we were talking in the green room about, like, I'm prepping for speaking at PubCon, is that links are important because they don't have to just be local. Links that you were doing before, you can still do, just put a local flair on it. All the things that apply from a national level, I think not all, but I'm generalizing here, but most of them translate into the local avenue as well. You just tweak things a little bit. Like you have to be more, I think local forces you to be more real. Like you can do more generic things on a national level, but local, like people say, like, well, how do you specialize in local? Like if you're an SEO, then you can do local SEO. You just have to do it a little differently and understand that quality matters, I think, much more than quantity from a local level, especially when we're talking about links. Like I can get 500,000 links in a national, if I'm trying to rank Toyota above Honda on, and that number, I just made the 500,000 up, but I can get those at a national level much easier than maybe I could get 10 links to a specific Honda dealership versus a specific Toyota dealership. And that's because in my mind, I think the algorithm there's much more authority based on those links at a local level. Yes. Because that's how it's changing. Like if you can get a buy with on a scale of 1 to 10, not PageRank, but on a scale of 1 to 10, you could get through with like some 4 links, quality links, 4s and 5s at a national level, whereas on a local level, it needs to be 6s, 7s, and 8s to carry that same weight. Because Google knows that you're more than likely going to be on the go. You're not sitting at a desktop, you're using your phone. I want those links to matter. I want that ranking and that listing to be relevant to someone who might need it right then and there.
Yeah, I agree. And actually, local became very, very important in 2013. I know that because that's when I got my first local client, because they lost a very large portion of their traffic when they first brought in localization, because over half of their traffic was coming from the United States. All of a sudden, they lost half their traffic. In other words, all the traffic that came from the United States now had to have also the term Toronto or Canada in it, or it didn't rank where it did previous.
Right. It wasn't an accidental, a group association of that makes sense, but not to that. Yes.
Yeah. I think also, I suspect, I can't point to any empirical evidence on it, but I suspect that Google is algorithmically vetting the quality of inbound links for locals under a tighter, more stringent requirements than they do for national.
Actually, I would think it's actually lower because there's less opportunities.
Yeah, I think it's lower that they have a more of a benefit of the doubt from a local standpoint than until you give them a reason to the opposite. That's sort of why the Google post, that's how I tie that back in, is that I think there's less spam and less crap at the local level because because frankly there are, like, in this room, not this room, but like when there's 10 of us in this room, maybe 2 of us are focused on local. If that switches, when it gets to the point that 80% of SEOs and SEMs are dealing in a local level, then I think it changes. Then their standard gets significantly lowered, and that's when the net gets bigger of what you have to go through. But the fact that right now it's not abused to the scale that it could be from a bigger level, I think more passes through. I agree with Terry.
And I believe that a lot of SEOs that do mainly national don't even care what they're doing locally, and they're usually leaving a lot of traffic on the table.
Oh yeah, I think that
definitely buy that.
the low-hanging fruit from a local standpoint is ginormous. It's
Yeah.
amazing. Like you could have I remember having conversations with folks. That's why, I mean, I talk about conferences a lot, but that's how I met half of you guys. And like, that's what I like. I like going to conferences, and it's amazing when you talk to so many people and you say one thing and they go, "Oh, I never really thought about it that way." And it's like, yeah, I can give you 30% of your traffic back that you lost with not provided when you didn't know where it was coming from. You know, you could do like tiny little tweaks here and tiny little tweaks there that your agency or your consultant that you're working with, not to throw shade on anybody. Wow, I've never said that before in my life. Is that most of them, to your point, Terry, are looking at it from a 30 feet down perspective and are so missing the tiny little things that you could be doing from a local standpoint that would bump you up in a heartbeat.
Yeah. And when I said lower quality, Doc, what I meant was specifically a lot of your links locally are coming from directories and what is normally thought of as lower quality sites, but actually they're the majority in the local level.
Okay.
And quite often you go for the ones that are city specific.
Okay.
Yep.
Now
Yep.
that I certainly agree with. I was thinking when I was saying vetted, I was thinking more in terms of them giving more credibility to a link to a Peoria dealership from somebody in Detroit than they would from somebody in San Francisco or
Yeah, but how
somebody
would
who
that
works.
person in, not to cut you off, Doc, but how would that person in Detroit know what's going on in another city? Not really.
Well, Peoria and Detroit isn't that far apart, is my point.
Oh,
I mean, geographically or thematically, I just think that they're probably more critical of qualifying, the credibility of an inbound link in the local arena than they are in the national arena, just in terms of how they look at should this site be linking to that site.
See, that's where I don't think they do that. I think that it'd be more, I think they have a simple filter or simple, and not getting into the algorithm, but I think they have simple flags that tick that, like, if a Florida business links to a California business, that doesn't necessarily make sense. Maybe we'll look into that if they're connected some way, but I think that ticks the thing. But I think they have much wider spectrum from, I don't know if it's a mileage or a zip code or a radius where you just pop it down and go, these are all connected. I think they give them more of the benefit of the doubt from that standpoint. I think the link counts more. I think I don't think they put it through the same gauntlet of tests that they would put a regular link through in a national level. I think it gets by quicker. And to Terry's other point, like with the directories, like that's one of the things I'm going to talk about, is that from a national level, you mock industry specific vertical directories as spam and crap. And they are from a national standpoint. If you're trying to rank Toyota over Honda and all you have is directories in 50 different regions and cities, then that looks spammy from that level. But that is still the mom and pop's way of aggregating data and determining relevancy at a local standpoint. So I don't know that your point isn't, I don't want to say you're completely wrong, Doc, or my opinion is different, but I think that they might have a couple more initial questions, but once you get past those first couple, I think they let the linking go by a lot better than they do at the national level. I think national, there are more hoops to jump through to be considered relevant to each other.
Well, there's certainly going to be a lot more competition, like you were saying earlier, too.
Yeah. And also consider, Doc, we're talking about directories. Now, if you're looking at blogs, right there, you're probably more correct than these very region-specific directories. Mainly what they're looking at with them, are they doing reviews, and are those reviews trustworthy? The same goes for almost any directory. If you go to the submission page and it says, give us $5 and raise your rankings, run, don't because
good luck with that
you're
one.
telling Google I'm a spammer when you get put into that directory.
Got to be at least $10, or it's not real.
Yeah.
I was gonna say something about maybe a discussion on the two extremes of local. On the one hand, you have the small mom pop store who does not have a website, but they have a Google My Business page and are getting lots of traffic to the bricks and mortar store from the Google My Business page. And then on the other extreme, it's more of what you're doing, Kevin. You have an overlord, for lack of a better word, and a whole bunch of Google My Business pages in little communities of connected dealers. And so that's the kind of the two extremes and of local.
Well, I think that yes, and like the way that we do it is we treat our dealerships, our clients, as the mom and pops. Like we do it that way, and that's one of the things I like about it is that we're not going for the scale link building. We're doing what sounds like a cliche, but you have to do real stuff to reach out to to really cultivate those links. You have to do the real stuff and do the smaller stuff. So you have to do it at you can do small stuff at scale, but we try to look at it as niche, try to find as niche citations as possible instead of more of the generic. So we go with the bigger directories from a regional standpoint, and then we do a lot of niche citation to pull those things in for specifics to do that way. But there's a lot of when you mentioned about blogs, Terry, I think that I think as much as guest blogging blew up on the national, like that whole it doesn't work anymore, and this, it definitely works from a local standpoint.
I totally agree.
You can combine two things. This is cool. I'm like testing out my PubCon presentation. So if you're not going to PubCon, you should. You could hear this. Is that you can combine ego bait of experts within a region. So if you have folks that are like local local television celebrities or local gurus, here's a fun one: the Saturday mornings and the Sunday morning newscasts that are usually not staffed by the grade A anchor people. They have a lot of local segment, local flavor. You'll have a chef come in and do those kind of things. Those are the people that you then target. If they have an online presence, you target them to write a blog for you guys. So you're ego baiting and you're guest blogging, and more than likely it's going to come from either their restaurant, or maybe you get the TV station to put it up that oh, this is our chef who's also posting a blog. Then you can get 2 links for the price of one kind of standpoint. Not that you're buying them. That was a figure of speech. But you can combine a lot of things that maybe used to work from a national standpoint that have been abused by SEOs for years and don't carry the same weight. Those on a scale of a much smaller standpoint do work. Yeah. So that's been the interesting thing we were joking in the green room that I don't have a lot of link building experience. I do, I just don't have the time to do the link building that I used to put in, because you got to put your nose to the grindstone and get stuff done. But I like being able to take some old techniques and apply them at a different level and see success with them at the local level.
Yeah, I found that when I took over this account, I had to move the rankings up quickly. And so I had to come up with something fast. Luckily, I know a lot of webmasters in Toronto with pretty good blogs. Contacted a few of them, put up a few blogs, and they're now at the top of the rankings. So they went from doubled the traffic since I took over, roughly, and that was from a pretty good base considering what they have there. I would say that also Where guest blogging can often run into a problem is where you have a blog where multiple different topics are on the same blog. That's usually one of the things that Google looks for when they're looking for guest blogs is the topics on the homepage. That came right from Matt Cutt's mouth when Panda was released and Penguin. That those are things that
coming from where the guest blog lives, not your site. Like you can handle multiple things, and that's why I think if you don't get too creative, if you keep it, for lack of a better term, keep it simple, stupid, is sometimes if you look at something and go, well, I know what this topic is. That's why I don't want to say like mommy bloggers, but like you go, that's why I made the chef thing, is that if you can find your guest blogger that is focused on one area or one vertical, then you're usually escaping the spam.
Yeah. The other thing is at a local level, it makes more sense that a local restaurant and a local car dealership are doing cross promotion. That does not look spammy. That looks normal, and how business has always been done in smaller towns. And
yep.
you know,
and that's back to both of our points, that it cuts through the for lack of a better term, the bullshit factor or the bullshit filter from Google, that it doesn't look spammy because
it passes the guest post.
Exactly. Like it would make sense that a lawyer would deal with a hospital. Like you would do all of these things. You can make where society has assumed you are connected is a great way to start. You go with the assumptions of like, well, wait, these are always going hand in contractors and real estate agents, like work within your industries. You get screwy when you try to have like a lawyer. No, that's a bad example. But like if you had like a television repairman and a car dealership, don't really necessarily go together. But like you can, the best thing about these is the sniff test with Google is usually exactly what our own sniff test is. When you look at it and go, there's no reason for them to be connected. Why would they review one another? Like, or why would they contribute to one another? But then at a local level, it makes much more sense because, Terry, to your point, that's how businesses do business.
They're talking to the same audience too, Kevin.
Yep.
Right? They share an audience. So it makes more sense for them to be cross-posting.
You know, I think you made an important point a minute ago too. An awful lot of people, when you hear people talking about having a million different topics, I think too many people are assuming that the target site, the site that's receiving the links and the guest, particularly guest posting, if you're talking about quilting and DIY home repair and pet care and child parenting and all these different topics on your blog, that is not necessarily a bad thing. But if the guest blogger is doing that, as Terry's point is, that's definitely a bad thing. I think if you think in terms of a guest blogging, if you think in terms of specialists, if you have a guest blogger on whatever topic your post is about, his post is about on your site, who is somewhat credible and established and specializes in that particular area, I think that post is going to be a whole lot more valuable to your site than somebody who blogs on 16 different niches.
Right.
And I think too many people are assuming, but too many people are assuming that multiple topics is a problem with their site as opposed to the guest blogger's site.
Right. And another thing I think a lot of SEOs don't really think about, and it goes back to what I just said to Kevin about audience. Look, for me, a cell phone is relevant to any site it wants to put itself on. You know why? Because everybody's uses a cell phone. Yeah. It's relevant to everybody who comes to that site, and that's what relevance should really be about, not keywords and that kind of stuff. It's audience that I think Google really wants relevance. They want it to be relevant to the audience. That's my thinking. I've said that for a long time. I don't get a lot of people supporting that stance. But
well, I think again, context is really what comes into play when you start looking at entities. If you've got a guest blogger who is a podiatrist, it's not going to matter that much whether he's talking about work boots or track shoes. He's got some credibility talking about the effects on your feet of your footwear, okay? But if you're talking about a track runner and, a cross-country runner talking about hiking boots, not so much.
right.
And,
Right,
people,
and I think if you can get, and the reason I brought up the guest blogging, if you can get to Doc's point, if you can get the industry expert or the topic expert versus the paid speaker, there's the ones.
Sure.
You can see the ones who write on a multitude. Give me the industry, or give me the thought leader. That's a term that is all over the place. Give me the thought leader who's just gonna, and I think that they can sniff that out a lot quicker when it's like, well, this guy's guest posts show up all over the place. He's a paid writer versus he's an industry specific to this degree.
Well, sure, because every writer is basically
Bill Slosky too, though, Kevin. He writes on it in a number of different places, and I wouldn't say he's a guest poster.
No, but I also think that his thought leadership or his authority is on multiple topics, so it's not that big of a deal. I meant more like if you were the poster about I think your credibility goes down a bit if you're posting on every topic.
Oh, I see. Okay.
That's what I meant. Like if Google looks at it and goes, oh, this person is less of, that's why like from I would use the television person to get to the chef, but I wouldn't want the blog coming from the television person because they talk on a multitude of topics.
Exactly.
Then I would want it to be more focused.
And I think looking at authors as exactly what they are, they're people, they're entities. And how does Google identify and qualify an entity? Again, context is going to come into play. What's the general field of expertise of that particular author? And it's like you were saying, it's much more what that author, what that entity has around them rather than what you have on your blog.
Yeah, I definitely get Kevin's point about the person who's writing on a whole bunch of topics. He's a content provider.
Exactly.
The other person is an influencer, or someone who has expertise, real expertise. I think that's becoming more and more important. And it's not on just your money in your life. I think that was a big injustice. Hanging that term on what happened in August was a mistake because a lot of it is query reclassification.
Yes, I agree. I think they really jumped the ball or jumped the shark with that. Like, it doesn't have to be. It wasn't the medic update. It wasn't the money of your life. It was many other industries that might have thought they weren't impacted because they didn't do the right. They're not looking at the right numbers to understand that update hurt them just as much as it hurt somebody else.
Yeah, I would say though that it's much easier to make a decision on those your money or your life pages than it is on some other topics that aren't your money or your life. Because for your money or your life, you're probably looking at someone that when you look at their bio, you want to see doctor or you want to see an institution. If they don't have those, they're not really an expert. I looked at a number of those sites in the Systrix thing, and the big one for me were the two diabetes sites. One site did really well, one did really poorly. And when you looked at it from the surface, they looked like they were doing pretty much the same things. Difference was in one blog, they were all professionals. They were all doctors and institutions. The others were people who were inflicted with diabetes too. And they were also doing research and publishing it. I think that's what killed them. the fact that those guys didn't have the accreditation that the other site had. And it was a big swing, over 40%. One went up 20 something, the other went down the equivalent.
No,
That tells you
I
a
can
lot.
see that. Yep, that would be like I'm waiting to see the data because it's not my client, it's from a friend. But I have a friend who does a private investigative service, and I'm waiting to see if he was impacted on a similar case where he was like the secondary. The police. I'm curious if the news and the police reports had more weight because they were police versus I'm figuring it out on my own. Same idea. Like I'm not an accredited. It's kind of like you have a badge, but you don't have a gun because you're not a cop. You're a PI, and trying to see whether or not he's losing rankings based on he doesn't have the accreditations. So I would be, if I get that data, I'll kick it over to you to if it lines up with the diabetes type stuff.
Yeah, and I can tell you one workaround that's been kind of talked about a bit. Tim isn't here, but since he talked, did he talk about that live, Doc, or was it in the green room?
You're muted,
Tim's,
Doc.
Solution for creative, getting the doctor's name.
I don't recall if that was live or not, Terry.
Yeah,
So,
okay, then I'm not going to say anything until I speak to Tim. I'll tell you privately, Kevin. And anybody who wants to know what we're discussing, it's Tim calling. I don't have his email address handy. We'll see what we can do.
A servant's heart.
Yeah, Servant's Heart is his website. And he's really good in that sector. Anybody who's looking for caregivers and that sort of thing.
He's had some pretty good success with his local SEO work too.
Yeah, he's one of the guys I listen to when he talks.
Yep.
So anything else? What do you think of reviews as part of the ranking?
Are they really part of the ranking?
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying too.
I think they are, but it's that whole, to what degree are they? I think it's less that they are part of the ranking and how people interact with those reviews, if that makes sense. Like,
right.
I think
they're less important about ranking now and more important about people are now starting to look at reviews of companies before they make buying decisions.
Yes, I think it's more of a call to action aspect. It's built into. Yes, I never thought the number of reviews or the level of reviews you had to do with ranking. I thought before that if you didn't have reviews, it sounds odd, but like I thought if you didn't have reviews, you didn't do as well because people didn't take the time to interact with you. That's how I thought the algorithm played into it, but not so much.
Local packs where the people in them have no reviews.
Right. No, that's what I more meant with the beginning. That was what I originally thought, and then with their change in service terms, with the review gating going out the window, I knew that was a sign to me that it's not in the ranking algorithm. Like if it was in the algorithm, then I think they wouldn't tell you what kind of reviews you could have and what you couldn't have. That makes sense. Like when they I think it really is more of just goes to a CTR than it does to the rankings. I think it helps.
And I also think the review of the reviews has gotten to the point of ridiculous. I mean, someone comes and gives you a 3 rating, right? And don't even leave a review. Just give you a rating. I look in our stuff and I don't see a form submission I don't see anything from them. Like, what is it based on? How can they use a thing where there's no comment and just a 3-star rating and no review and, like there's no, the guy wasn't even on our site. I mean, like, how can you have any faith in a review system like that?
Well, plus the fact that reviews are just so easily gamed anyway. I've always felt like they've probably got little, if any, input into rankings. It just doesn't make sense.
Right, they're modern testimonials. There's the same reason that testimonials don't mean crap on your website, because of course they're gonna. How do I know who wrote it? There's no. I think. Sorry, I lost my train, but I was thinking that it's more of, to Terry's point, the social relationship of the review based on how you're connected. So if I reviewed that, and if Google, this is more of a Facebook thing, but like, how could you have a bad interaction? Like if your review, if they really mattered, then they would be counting more of how many times have you been to that business that you just let, like, you put down a 3-star rating, but you go to that business, like if it's me, like Google Maps can see that I go to the grocery store by my apartment once a week. And like, if I put up a review that says this grocery store is miserable, and then like I'm never going back there, and Google turns around and goes, well, actually you still go there once a week. So obviously reviews carry with it emotion more so than actual situation. But you're right. The reviews of the reviews, like that's one of the things we do. I think from my business, like car dealerships, reviews definitely matter, and interactions from a customer service level. The responses to the reviews carry more weight, I think, than the reviews do a lot of the time. Because especially if you can show that those responses to the reviews are authentic and real. So we try to get our dealerships away from the canned response that just looks like a bot popped it back out. You said the same thing every time. You don't have to get into specifics, but if you just highlight a couple of things, it'll show the person reviewing you. It'll discount a negative review much easier by your response than anything. Sorry, I'm going off topic, but that's why.
What you're saying is your response could be more important than the actual review itself.
Yes, it will lead to more things. And that goes back to the fact that it is the user experience is what Google reviews and all reviews are. They're not in the algorithm. It doesn't, having 1-star reviews isn't going to knock you down below the guy who has 5-star reviews, I don't think.
Well, and I've always felt as though realistically, any business is going to have some 5s and some 1s. You're going to have some pissed off clients, and don't hide those 1s.
No, don't
use them. They could be gold if you respond. You know, and I've had really good luck with getting really crappy reviews, even on Yelp. But particularly if someplace like Facebook, where somebody comes in and they're complaining about the way they were treated, and you immediately interact with them and you try to find out. You're not just talking to that user. You're talking to 20 or 200 spectators too, and how you handle yourself, how you respond is gold. Because if that guy is being a prick and he's just trying to badmouth you because he's having a bad day, it's going to come through to the majority of your viewers too. If you're doing the right thing, the reasonable thing, and really trying to accommodate them, and he's unwilling to listen, they're going to jump out to your defense. They're going to be speaking up in the threads and saying, hey, come on, idiot. You should have known that. You should have thought of that. Or you never said anything.
Right.
They're trying to make it right. What's wrong with you? You know?
You're speaking, to your point, Doc, you're speaking. I think often businesses get stuck in the speaking to a past customer. Your response to that past customer is speaking to your future customer.
Big time. Big time.
You are continuing. My favorite, and I've said this before on this thing, is that one session at a local meetup along 6 months ago, a customer or a business got up and was like, well, how do I stop all of, I'm getting a bunch of 1-star reviews. And I looked at him in front of a bunch of people. And I was like, stop doing dumb shit. Like if all of your reviews say I have an X bad experience at this spot because of this, well, stop doing that.
Look in the mirror.
Yes, don't fix the review, and people laugh. But it's that goes back to the Occam's razor. What's the shortest distance to a problem? Like, fix the problem. Don't fix the people telling you about the problem. And
Right.
to Doc's point, you can see when you look at a review, often some of the bad reviews come from an ex-employee or somebody with a bone to pick. And most of you have to take faith, whatever kind of business that you have, you have to take faith and trust your future customer base that they will be able to see through the BS from that kind of review. And that goes back to my other point about that's why you have to make sure that your responses in those situations are tactful. Like, try to take the emotion out of it. If you read something, that's one of the things I like about our service and what we tell with dealers is that we'll do the negative review responses for you. We work with you, but we take the like, oh, if I've said something bad about Terry, I take Terry out of the equation. Terry, tell Bob everything that you want to say. And then Bob is going to say it, because when Terry types it, it's going to have more piss and vinegar in it than it should. And you can't, once you put it out there, you can't take it back. So I go with the read your review, write down your response, and then read it again, maybe hand it to somebody else, and then respond back to it. And that'll catch you from going, oh, I shouldn't have said that.
But those negative reviews can be major opportunities to strike gold, though, if they're handled right.
Yep. And also, here's a bonus tip for the week. I don't know where this is coming from. This is what happens when Dave's not here. He gave me crap last week because I didn't say anything for like the entire session. But you can look at negative reviews as a great source for your competitive analysis. You want to know if you're looking at especially from a local standpoint, if you want to see what your competitors' pain points are, look at their Google Q&A and look at their reviews to see what people are telling them are their pain points,
yep,
and then do that better.
Right.
That's what happens when Steve asked me to talk about local.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to touch on, was you were talking about industry specific directories, and I got the feeling you thought they were not so good. I know that one of my clients, now he's in an industrial industry, he gets 5 to 7% of his traffic from referral traffic from one of those industry specific directories.
No, I think they're good from a local standpoint. I think that they have they're treated by us on a national level. If we were talking about this from a global standpoint, they're treated as spam, or spammy, in that they're just a data dump of things. But from a local standpoint, no, they are definitely, that's where we look to find citations. That's where I think 90% of the local citations come from directories.
Yeah, there are a lot of opportunities.
And it goes back to when people say, well, this link, I got a link from this client or from this site, and it's no follow. Okay.
So?
But somebody came, okay, so the search engine doesn't count it. I don't really care. Somebody came from that link and then filled out my form and bought my product. Okay, then I really don't care if nobody follows it. If it can get you a customer, if people can get to your site and it's viable for a human or that kind of thing, then it's fine. And that's where, like, directories, that's why Yellow Pages still exists. Yellow Pages online doesn't, like, and they still have books too, which I find funny.
Google asked us to use no follow when we thought things were not quite right. They didn't say do it, so there's no juice pass. They decide that. And the SEO thinks Google is letting us decide the link graph is an idiot.
Yeah,
Right?
No, you're helping them. You're just creating another data point where you're like, hey, don't do this. And either from both sides, either I tell you not to go that way, and your first instinct is to be like, well, why do you kept telling me not to go that way? I'm going to go that way. Or you go, oh, I believe Kev, I'm not going to go that way, but I don't. It doesn't do one or the other. You're right, Terry. It's like,
if Google thinks a site is good, it doesn't care whether that site owner has put no follow on it or not.
right.
They decided what is no follow from that site and what's not. Just like if you put a good site in your disavow file, Google isn't going to is not going to remove the page rank.
Right.
You made a mistake. They're going to continue to treat that site like they did before.
But
Well, even going back to Matt Cutts, he's said both those things himself.
Yes.
It's a request or a suggestion, but we make the final decision.
Right.
Yep.
And they're very specific about two things: the knowledge graph and the link graph. Those two things, they decide what goes in. Any SEO thinks differently is badly.
I saw somebody who was considered a prominent SEO a month or two ago published a post where they said that basically when you submit a disavow list, you're having the domains that you list kicked out of the link graph. I said, you've been into the fucking edibles or what? What kind of a fucking moron said something
Where
like
did he get his information? Like, that's so wrong.
I was so...
Was that Chase? No, I'm just kidding.
No, but it was somebody who supposedly is prominent and has been around for several years.
I don't care prominent being around. I don't care. They can be just as stupid as anybody else.
Well, or sometimes stupider, apparently.
Skeptical of everything you hear until proven otherwise. I don't listen to everything Dave said. Like, Dave said it. It's written in stone. No, I debate lots of things with him.
Oh, sure. No, I just couldn't believe that. That's my jaw about hit the floor.
And nobody probably even called the guy on it. That's the worst part, that no one called him on it because they were chicken. They were afraid to call the guy out.
Well, I couldn't figure out a way to do it without being a really raging prick, because I was just so flabbergasted.
I just grabbed the video where Matt Cutts said that and said, well, what does this mean? Was this guy lying? Should I believe you or someone from Google? I don't know.
I just filed for future reference, never listen to a fucking thing he says again without...
That's right. That's what you do. Put him on the stupid list.
Oh, that list is so long.
About the
I quit keeping a list. It just got too long to manage.
Now it's like everybody starts out on a stupid list. If you do well, I might take you off.
Yeah. Or I may start reading your stuff. There aren't many of those.
The other thing I was going to say about the follow and no follow, that an unlinked citation still has some value. So it's not even about follow and no follow sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes if it's on the right site, that non-linked citation could be as valuable as a link off a smaller site.
Yep.
All right.
No, I think unlinked citations definitely have value. Sure.
Something like a PR, I would rather have a non-linked citation than a direct link off of a press release.
Well, the other thing, like for instance, New York Times, they'll often mention somebody that gave them some information and even mention their business name, but they're not going to put a link, even though followed link.
Right.
9 times out of 10. Okay, so to me, it doesn't surprise me in the least that New York Times didn't drop a link to this guy's site, but I know that they do this all the time, so it still carries a certain amount of credibility that they would even mention it. And I would hope that Google probably looks at the history of this site and their linking habits and takes that into consideration.
I mean, not to do that. It just looks at the authority of the Times site and says, oh, yeah, this one, that's probably a good
Exactly.
And then they look at the context in the New York Times article and associates authority to the citation of the context, like what they're talking about. They're talking about, veterinary medicine, and they're linking to some animal hospital talked about in the New York Times, and then that animal hospital gets a certain amount of authority around veterinary medicine.
I remember several years ago, I'm sure you remember too, Terry, one of the articles that the reporter at, I think it was the Times, that called Dave, asking him about something, and he didn't get a link. He said, "Yeah, well, big deal. I got my name in the New York Times. That's cool. That's certainly not a bad thing." But he didn't get any link. But he did have a couple of quotes, and I said, to me, it wasn't like he was being interviewed. He was one of several people that were talked to, and they quoted Dave a couple of times in quotation marks within the article. Now, to me, that establishes more importance to the Times what Dave Harry had to say. They put more credence in his comments, enough so to quote them in their article. Being quoted in the New York Times isn't always a good thing. Ask Donald Trump. But
context is everything, isn't it, Doc?
Yeah, but he didn't seem to feel like quotes. I don't know if that really has anything. But I still think that probably plays in a little bit to the credibility, authority. Probably more so now even than it used to, and that's 5-6 years ago, I think. But
quite a while ago.
I don't know. I think that unlinked citations, mere mentions, it's kind of like a non-live link. If you type in www.universalwebbuilders.com, but not without link, that probably has more value than just saying his company, Universal Web Builders. Probably, maybe, I don't know. I think we still tend, as a body, SEOs still tend to think too much in terms of what worked in 2003, and not looking at what is being planned for 2020.
But the thing is, Doc, that did work in 2003.
Oh, sure. But because it worked, now we assume it's always going to be the best way to do things. And that ain't, we know that ain't always the case.
But also, there's still a lot of things that people think don't work anymore that do work.
Sure.
Yeah.
So that is that goes back to a couple of our workshops that Dave put together that you guys were on with the testing. That is why you have to. I'm not bringing that can of fish or kettle of fish. I almost had it.
At least that this week on Dojo Radio.
But that's where stuff works, when you go back and go, well, wait, this is the thing that the powers that be in our community said doesn't work anymore. And then you turn around and go, nope, it still works. Just not all of us turn around and tell everyone, hey, all this stuff still works, because you either know it does or it doesn't. But I'm not saying we should do all that crap. I'm just saying that I lean more toward most SEOs don't think about the future. Most people don't think about how to evolve with the algorithm, evolve with the entity that is Google. I think most of us spend too much time reading what other people have done and doing it, trying to recreate what they've done instead of thinking forward.
And they also mentioned in the testing how keywords are becoming less and less prevalent in titles. Well, that makes sense, because keywords are less and less everywhere in the whole thing. They're less important. So hopefully you should see less, because that's the way we should be doing it. We should be thinking in concepts. So if you're doing your testing using an old metric like matches, right, you're going to look at that title and say, oh, keywords in the title is no longer important.
Okay.
Right, to your point, it's that keywords have gone. Like I told one of my consultants this the other day, I was like, the old expression of long tail keywords, and he was like, that's not an old expression. I'm like, yes, it is. Yeah. All searches are long tail. Nobody searches one thing anymore, and you don't Google is an answer box. They are concept searches, to Terry's point.
I'm going to jump off the track for a second to go back to something you said a minute ago, Kevin, about trying to figure out what Google is going to do, where it evolve with it, where is it going. I'm a great believer in the Wayne Gretzky SEO school of thought. Be where they're going to go. Figure out how the hell they're doing things and what's their apparent goal, and get there first and be waiting for it and ready for it, and have your client ranking for it when they finally do it.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to copy the other guy, make the other guy copy your ass.
That's the worst thing to do is copy the other guy sometimes. You know why? Because you could be just copying another idiot.
Yep.
Yep. When you're sitting in class, cheating on the wrong guy.
Against major competitors that are 10 times their size with 10 times their budget, I have twice the visibility. Why? Because I find keywords and concepts that none of them are even working on. I mean, lots of them. Over half of my traffic is from keywords, probably, that none of the other competitors are even looking at. And when I looked the other day, I discovered a new term for the space that I put into play. I was number 2, and there was one other company that was actually trying to rank for those keywords. And they're brand new keywords to the industry, but they're going to get bigger because that's this industry that I'm talking about. Since I've been with them, the main keyword has changed 3 times. It's like the users are all changing their mind what they're using to search for the same thing.
What's it going to call something?
So the moral of the story is
office space, business center keywords.
So don't copy your competitor unless you know that you're competing with Terry. If Terry is your competitor,
right.
Definitely
make sure your guy is the guy worth copying.
Oh yes, that's why.
A good way to figure that out: go to SEMrush and look at their distribution. Mm-hmm. The guys with the highest distribution are finding the most 9 times out of 10, and they're the guys to follow.
I think too many people, I think the ones that aren't doing it right are just missing what they should be shooting for, to all of our points. That like, you need to know what your competitors are doing so that often it's both versions of that. I don't want to copy my competitor. I want to see what he's doing that's working. Like, back to my link things, that's one of my other recommendations, is that I'm going to, I recommend you can steal a lot of your competitors' links if you look at what they're doing that are doing well. But then you have to not copy them, because the ultimate goal is I don't want to be right next to them. I want to go past them. So you have to do both from that standpoint, and it'll help keep them. I'd love it when a competitor copies what I'm doing, jumps ahead of me, and then gets left in the dust. It's so much fun. It's like, oh, you're doing what we're doing, but just so you know, we stopped doing what you're doing now. We stopped doing that 12 months ago, and it's just now catching up to us. So we're doing something else, and you have no idea of that.
My favorite is always having something else I can add in the toolbox. You know what I mean? So someone copies me and goes above, I'll just do something else and go above them again. Then they have to figure out what I did.
Yep, it's like Jenga. It's like the thing where you pull the pieces out and you go, oh, and somebody goes, yep, this is it. And you're like, oh, by the way, I can do this.
That's why when I reach a certain point, say the midpoint on the first page of results, I'm going to stop actively trying to raise the rank on that until it falls, or I find a better opportunity to move it up.
Yes, and that is great. And when your clients can understand that being in the 3rd position or the 4th position is just as valuable, that you don't have to be number 1, that is ideal. When you can be like, look, I raised you from the 3rd page to the middle of page 1. I've increased your leads. I've done all of these things. It's so much easier just to be like, let's keep moving here than to stay at the number 1 position. And then you have nowhere to go but down.
I don't have to work on any of my number 1 rankings. They're there. I don't have to do anything to keep.
Right, I know, but then the client, I love my number 3s. I'm sorry. I love the 3s, because I sit there and go, well, they're going to go to 1s, 2s, and it depends on the industry. It depends on the vertical. Like, a car dealer in the 3rd position is more than likely right behind the manufacturer and the national, or the aggregated services, like an auto trader. And I love when they're like, but we're in the 3rd position. I was like, yeah, but you're in the number 1 position. There's
Right.
nobody's going to jump above you, and those two aren't going to come down. You're in a perfect spot. Leave it alone.
You're not competing with Ford, and you're not competing with Auto Trader. You're competing with the car dealership down the street.
Who are all behind you. Yeah.
Yep.
That's a good thing. Another thing is clients that want to rank #1 for a keyword that gets no traffic.
Yep.
You want to waste money? Okay.
You're
You're headed down the right trail.
I had a client this week send me a letter from one of those SEO firms that are auditing their site and going to tell them how they can rank, and it was geared towards PPC. But I wrote her back and I just said, yeah, that keyword is gonna give you a lot of traffic, but you don't do that.
So not gonna get you a lot of sales.
yeah, I was gonna say, we could put the rank for the keyword naked boobs, and you'd get lots of traffic, but you don't do that either.
I think that goes in the Mount Rushmore of SEO, or like the SEO handbook that we've all had that conversation with the client in every vertical that says, well, I want to rank for this. Well, that's great. Like, I don't guarantee you rankings, because if I did, I could be like, I can guarantee you rank for Kevin Dory. It's your SEO on this topic. That's what I can rank for. Like, that's what I can guarantee. Everything else, let's get you ranking on things that your customers are searching for and that people will get to your website for, not what you think people get to your website for. If you knew what that was, you'd be the SEO,
Right.
and I wouldn't be here. Like, we tell the dealers all the time, you sell cars, we bring people to your dealership. We don't sell cars.
Well, that's the whole ranking isn't supposed to be the goal. Making money is supposed to be the goal.
Right. Sales are the goal. Rankings, avenue to the goal.
Yep.
And the cost of acquisition or the cost of conversion is the goal too.
Sure.
Yeah. I always impress upon clients that all traffic costs you money. Not directly, but you're paying for all traffic. So not all traffic is equal. So not all traffic is worth going after just to get traffic. Because it costs you money to produce the content to get the traffic. It costs you money to serve the page, all of it. All those
going back, you remember back in the 90s when everybody's metric was number of hits they got.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm rich now. I got 10,000 hits this morning.
God,
you gonna buy a new car with that?
10,000 images on the page though.
I still hear that. Am I the only one? I can't be the only one that, like, I get on calls and I hear well, so we didn't have any hits today. And I was like, oh God, like, it's not a hit. It's not like, please just call it what it is. Like, it's almost as bad as clicks. Like, I need more clicks. Oh, shut up. Okay, fine. I want to put a hit counter up on all our websites and be like, yes, I want to go back to 1987 too. Like, these are the hits.
I actually get that. I do get clients talking about hits.
I literally did within the last week have a prospect talking about the number of hits. People love our site. We get about 13,000 hits a week.
Did you hit them back?
Are any of those buying you a new Jaguar this year? Yeah.
You want to talk to me about hits, then I'm going to hit you back. Like,
I'll hit you good.
The only people that really care about hits are those guys that are just writing spammy articles with lots of advertising on the page. And they're just hoping you're going to click on an ad.
Yeah.
Yep, affiliate marketing 101.
If they're getting the right kind of ads, they're getting paid just for you arriving on the site.
Sure.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. But, for me, that would be a tough way to make money.
Oh, God, no.
Got to write every day.
I'd rather go back to selling my body.
Man, if there's ever been a segue to end our Friday chat, that has been the perfect one.
Well, that was some hungry years, I got to tell you.
Close to an hour and a half. So,
well,
near the end of this.
There we go. We did an hour and a half in the blink of an eye.
Didn't even have a topic.
No.
That's good.
Well, we had some good discussion, though.
Yeah. That's when some of the best discussion happens, is when you don't have a set topic and you can just kind of go down the rabbit hole and chase her to the end.
Well, you want me to kill this?
Yeah. We're just going to be the SEO ferrets.
All right. Goodbye, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. See y'all next week.